guest this evening is Tessa B. Dick. And Tessa B. Dick began her writing career as a journalist, writing for magazines and newspapers. Her husband, Philip K. Dick, encouraged her to write fiction after he read her first short story. She worked with him on his later novels, including VALIS and A Scanner Darkly. Since then, Tessa has produced a variety of poems and stories, as well as a murder mystery and several memoirs. Two of her memoirs have been published in Italian translations, and her surrealist novel, The Darkening of the Light, which I like that title, The Darkening of the Light, is currently in the process of translation. Some of her shorter works can be found in the online magazine, and that's PKD Otaku. And you can access her website. Her books are available on Amazon.com. And I'm very, very excited. She has a blog that you can actually access. It's tessadick.blogspot.com. So please welcome Tessa to the show this evening. Good evening, Tessa.
Good evening. It helps to unmute my phone.
Hey, it's wonderful to hear your voice, and welcome aboard tonight. I'm excited to talk about your new book.
Oh, yes, me too. I'm just trying to join the chat room. Apparently, I am guest with a picture of a cat.
Oh, wonderful. There you go. That works.
How appropriate.
So, yeah, that's you for sure. And everybody say hello in the chat to Tessa. And if you have questions, make sure to text them in also. So you got involved in writing this book, My Life on the... Wait a second, that was My Life on the Edge of Reality. That's not the one I want to talk about, though. But I love that book, by the way. We discussed that the last time you were on the show. But this new book that you have out here, what compelled you to write about this topic with the Blade Runner?
Well, primarily, my readers kept asking me my opinion of the movie. And I missed it in theaters, but I did get the DVD and watched it on my brother's great big flat screen several times.
Mm-hmm.
And at home on a medium-sized flat screen, over and over. So I wrote a lengthy review. And it was just too long for an article, so I turned it into a very short book. Nice. It's about 150 pages. No photos inside. Usually I put photos inside, but I don't have any rights to photos from the film or of the actors, so I just got Nick Buchanan to make a lovely cover for me. Mm-hmm. He also does the layout for PKD Otaku, which is Japanese for fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And
nice.
Yeah, and he often contributes articles to PKD Otaku.
That's
anyway,
awesome.
Yeah. So
well, congratulations.
I went over them. Thanks. I went over the movie because, of course, everyone knows it's Ridley Scott's movie. He made the first one in 1982 and the second one just last year, 2017. And many people know that Hampton Fancher wrote both screenplays. But not enough people understand that the world of Blade Runner was created by Philip K. Dick. These are not original. They're adaptations of Phil's novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh, they're all welcoming me in the chat room.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. They're sweet in there. We got some good people in there.
Yeah. It's hard to type and talk at the same time.
Well, that's okay. And I remember Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and that is one of my favorite novels. Now, so you actually gave Phil, or did you give him the inspiration to write this book, or how did it come across insofar as your influence with this book?
Well, he actually wrote it and published it before I met him. But the day after we first met, he gave me a copy of it to read. And so it was the first time I knowingly read one of his books. I'm not good at remembering authors' names, I often have to look up who wrote War and Peace.
Mhm.
But I had actually read one of his stories and one of his other novels before I met him. And I thought they were good, but I did not remember the author's name.
Mhm.
But I was impressed by Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Mhm. It's an excellent,
Yeah.
excellent read. And I wasn't sure because I know you wanted to address something in the chat. I guess not the chat, but the on Facebook, somebody was mentioning something. And I don't know if there was some confusion about the authoring of the book itself. And that's why I was wondering if you want to address that. But it doesn't sound like you need to. It's entirely up to you.
Well, they did buy the rights to a novel called Blade Runner by Alan E. Norse. And there are some who claim that it's actually based on a screenplay that William S. Burroughs published as a book under the title Blade Runner. But that book was about a big drug dealer in New York. It had little to do with an apocalyptic city in California.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. Well, I'm glad that you actually did your assessment and analysis of the film itself. And, I haven't seen the new one. I didn't want to because I did like the first movie, The Blade Runner, but I didn't see the remake. So I don't know what that one, if it's any good or not. But it definitely does not stay on the storyline of what was there, correct?
Well, it does and it doesn't. It is the world of Blade Runner. But I think the marketing was a big mistake. They wouldn't let early reviewers tell anything about the story that it tells, nothing about the plot, no spoilers. And the trailers were all, shootouts and fistfights. And then you sit down in the theater and you're treated to 2 hours of artistic pans across landscapes and city streets. It's very good, but it isn't what the marketing led the audience to expect.
Right.
There isn't enough happening in the first 2 hours until they bring in the original Blade Runner, Rick Deckard. Why am I blank on the actor's name? Han Solo.
Harrison Ford, the old guy. But now he's in the remake too, right?
Yes, they bring him in for the last half hour of a movie that runs 2.5 hours. If you count the credits, it's 3 hours.
Oh gosh, that's a long time to sit through a film. I was just discussing this the other day. I can't sit there in a film for 2 to 3 hours. I'm sorry, I have a hard time.
Well, if they'd had an intermission so people could get snacks and use the restroom halfway through, it would have been nice. But sitting at home and watching it, I have a pause button.
That's true. That's the convenient. Yeah, you can take a break. Totally.
But it really deserves a big screen. There are some really big shots that need a big screen. Yeah.
So who owns the rights? I mean, let me ask you real quick. Who owns the rights when these guys are making all this money off of Philip K. Dick's work? Who is the person that's taking this? I mean, who has authority to do that?
Well, he had 3 children, Laura, Issa, and Christopher. And Issa is pretty much in charge. She's usually billed as an executive producer on the films. And she does a lot of the legwork and paperwork.
Okay. So there is family involved. I wanted to make sure. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether they got anything for the sequel to Blade Runner, this recent movie. They probably got some kind of payment, but I don't think they had personal involvement.
Right. I'm always curious because sometimes people hijack all these authors that were very brilliant, and then they just basically just plagiarize and steal, and then they create their movies, and nobody sees a cent who was the original author or even their families, and it just seems like such a disservice.
Yeah, well, I'm, in my book, I didn't go into that. It's pretty much out of my hands anyway, but if you deal with Hollywood, you expect to lose.
Yeah, truly.
And with the major publishers, if you aren't Stephen King, you'll never see a penny beyond the advance. Oh, if you hear booming sounds, it's our public fireworks show.
Is that right? Oh, wow.
It's a mile away, but it made me jump out of my chair.
I can imagine your kitties too, right? Probably sensitive to that.
Well, they're inside.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Except for Sweetie, the feral kitty, didn't come in, but the other three did.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it is the 4th of July is coming up right around the corner there, so no surprise. Although they banned fireworks here because of the dry weather.
Oh, yeah, we can't have personal fireworks. This is a professional show.
Right.
But they're used to it now. My youngest cat is 10.
Oh, yeah. It's got a good 20, well, about 13 more years. But yeah. So let's get back into that book for a second here. So I like the title, Blade Runner Creator, Philip K. Dick by Tessa B. Dick. So what sparked the title of that book?
Well, it was suggested by, I think it was, well, I better not say a name because I'm catching some flack for it.
Okay.
But a friend didn't like the title I came up with and suggested this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that Phil did create the world of Blade Runner, even though that isn't his title. Mm-hmm. The world is his. And Phil was amazed at how well the 1982 film captured his vision of the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did a really good job. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He didn't like the rushes that they showed him. Mm-hmm. And he thought Hampton Fancher had ruined his adaptation of the novel. But it turns out that Ridley Scott had played a big role in what Phil considered destruction, all car chases and shootouts. He thought Fancher's script was too talky, Ridley Scott did. So Phil insisted that they either fix it or he was going to trash it publicly and tell the world how they had ruined his story.
Wow.
So Ridley Scott brought in David Peoples as a script doctor. And Phil was satisfied with the changes, except for the voiceover. He hated that.
Oh, yeah? Interesting. How come?
Well, he wasn't writing the Maltese Falcon. It wasn't meant to be a voiceover with the detective talking. It was supposed to be more about interactions among the characters. Okay. But Ridley Scott didn't like it either, but the producers, the money men, had imposed it. And then I don't think Phil ever saw the happy ending they tacked on, but I'm sure he would have hated it. And Ridley Scott hated it too.
That's interesting. So what was the ending supposed to have been?
Well, it was supposed to end with just kind of up in the air in Ridley Scott's mind. why am I blank? Rick Deckard and Rachel should part ways, and you don't know whether they ever get back together again.
Okay.
Now, in the novel, Rick Deckard was never in love with her. It was a one-night stand, and he went back to his wife. But in the movie, he doesn't have a wife. And that leads to one of the problems I have with the 2017 film. They recreate Rachel for Deckard as a sort of bribe. Well, that would follow from the happy ending that Ridley Scott deleted from the original film.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a non sequitur.
Yeah.
He should not be in love with her, and they should not. Oh, spoiler alert. They should not have a child.
Yep. I think everybody's seen the film anyway. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense what you're saying there. So yeah, they definitely put it in a different orbit. A lot of the information.
Yeah. I found a number of plot holes. The biggest one is, I suppose they just had to have a scene of brutal violence. The replicant, Phil called them androids, the film calls them replicants. The one named Love, who is a brutal, unfeeling, cold killer, just has to have the police computer to find Officer K. So anyway, she has to kill someone to get to the computer. Well, the problem with that is that earlier in the film, Officer K has wiped the hard drive on his computer so that the police can't find him. But Love should be able to find him because he has a gadget that she's used to track him before when he was at the orphanage. So why does she need to use the police computer when that computer couldn't find him anyway?
Right. See, nobody thinks like you, Tessa, and you already know the inside of this information. But that's true. Yeah.
I'm trying not to give away too much of the story because some people might not have seen it.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting is that you can troubleshoot it because you know what's supposed to be there and what shouldn't, what should be there, what shouldn't be there. And it is interesting how they spun it in a different way.
Someone in chat said they have no sound.
What? We have no audio? I think we're hearing us. I don't know. No audio? Let me know, guys, because it doesn't look like it's flat. Wow, this is very strange. Let me know. I'm not sure what's going on, Tessa. I don't have you muted or anything. We should be okay to go here.
Okay.
And, we do check here with Jerry. Jerry, let me know. Go ahead.
Jerry says audio is fine.
Okay.
I'm a Jim says it isn't.
Okay, maybe they have to clear something on their computer then, because if one person's hearing okay. Jerry's hearing okay. All righty. I think we're okay with the audio. Yeah, you might want to clear that, Jen, whatever you're doing. Maybe you clear your something over there in your computer. Yeah, and then thank you, Bill. Bill's also said we have audio. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. But yeah, so very interesting.
Oh, here's us fine. Cool. Yeah, I've found that if I don't defragment the computer regularly, it's a refurbished Dell laptop with Windows 7, so I expect some glitches.
Well, I like Windows 7 and Windows, versus Windows 10, so that's the nightmare nobody wants to deal with.
Yeah.
Is better. Yeah,
well,
no doubt.
Yeah, but it was refurbished when I got it 2 years ago. So I can't expect too much of it.
Right.
All right. Well,
And thank you, Wally. Thank you for telling me loud and clear. And thank you, Mr. Rowan, there in the chat room. You guys are awesome. Right. Okay. So we're back to the movie. All right. So so very, very interesting here. So now your book just went live. How long has it been live? You just launched it, right?
It just got live today.
Congratulations.
Just in time for your show.
Hey, all right. Well, I put your link to purchase it in the chat room over there. So everybody knows to go to Amazon. That's the best way to get it, right?
Yes, it should be on other sites that sell books, but Amazon is the best, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, it gets the most traffic. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, it's a love-hate relationship with them sometimes, but for authors, it gets a lot of traffic. There's no doubt about that for sure. Well, I think this is going to take off, And so have you run into people wanting to criticize it?
Here and there, but, they really ought to read it first and not just go on the title.
I so agree with that as well. There's a lot of peanut gallerying anyway. But I can't wait to read it. Go ahead.
I asked Nick Buchanan to give me some feedback on an early draft, and his suggestions were very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
I had a mess, and he helped me clean it up. See, I get on a roll writing, and I just stick it at the end of whatever I already wrote, and then it's all a mishmash, and it needs to be organized.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to miss things, so another pair of eyes is always good.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I like that too. Somebody you can trust, without a doubt. Yeah, It sounds like a very good read. I'm looking forward to reading it. And like I said, I didn't even want to see the second film for whatever reason, so I'm glad I haven't, actually. It just doesn't sound like it's very appealing. Nowadays, too, they do so much CGI. I can appreciate, nice special effects, but it seems to me like they just oversaturate the screen. So like you were saying, where's the interaction? Where's the narrative?
Hold on, this is not CGI. There are some 10-foot tall skyscrapers, but that kind of stretches the definition of miniature. There's a little CGI added in post-production, but it's mostly real sets.
Are you talking about the new one? The new one that's out?
The new one, yeah.
Okay,
the
wow.
Old one had a lot of CGI and a lot of miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I really enjoyed the artistic cinematography, and it did win an Academy Award, which it really deserved.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only award the film won, which is right on. But you'll see scenes of Los Angeles that remind you of Metropolis.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
And you'll see landscapes washed out in orange. My only objection to them is they run too long. They need to be tightened up, and more needs to happen to keep the audience interested. But I'm sure that students of the cinema will be awed.
Mm-hmm.
They won't have the disadvantage of being stuck in a theater with no restroom break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they will appreciate it. And there's both films have nods to other films and literature. And of course, we have Rachel, who is literally made for Deckard, which should remind you of the Bride of Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And and of course, Officer K, they meant to refer to Franz Kafka's works, in which his hero is known simply by the letter K. But I immediately thought of Men in Black.
Interesting.
Which is a comedy.
Right.
Kind of breaks the mood.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bet a lot of people think of K in Men in Black. Tommy Lee Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Love that movie, by the way.
What's that?
I love the Men in Black movie.
Yeah. No, it was a very good film. I agree. That was a while back, and they did some sequels. Then once again, it's overkill. But yeah, the original one was really good.
I don't think I've seen the sequels, but my sister gave me Netflix on her family plan, so maybe they'll have them.
Yeah, they probably do, for sure. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm curious to see what people think, when they read your book and then they try to figure out the comparison, because most people, like I said, wouldn't be looking for the things that you noticed. Most people wouldn't even have a clue. So that's very, very interesting.
Well, I went over both movies and the novel and then added a little bit about Phil himself. I was wanting to add more, but it really didn't fit into this particular book. So I might have to write another one. And I have people waiting for a sequel to my science fiction novel, Fallen Angels.
Nice. I can't wait. So are you working on that or no?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
It's busy. I know you were writing mysteries. You also write mystery books, which are really cool.
Well, I have one published, and they want to see the sequel to that one as well. And here I am writing about Phil again, because those readers yell the loudest.
Wow.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
That's true. Well, I have to tell you, everybody loved Philip K. Dick. I mean, I know that I loved his work too, and he was a brilliant being. So I can see why they would probably look to you for answers and look to you for your advice or information, because you were with him and you were there. You were the witness, and that's really important, by the way, because so many people do hearsay, but when you're really there interacting and you're part of that, it makes a huge difference.
Well, I think I was the only one who really listened to him and took him seriously.
That's important.
I mean, there were other people in his life, but I don't think they were really respectful to him.
Right.
With a few exceptions. But toward the end, too, his paranoia, which probably was totally justified, drove many people away.
Yeah.
Well, somebody was out to get him.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that, when I did my interview, and we discussed some other things with Camilio. I know we were discussing this in another show with the other guest. But I can tell you, it is interesting, because I'm sure that they were kind of gaslighting or gang stalking him. It certainly seems like they were after him, or definitely wanting to screw with him. So that was very interesting when you look at his background, Philip's background on that level. Putting the pieces together. And what about you? You being targeted. I think you even mentioned to me that you felt like you were being targeted to some degree, or possibly.
Possibly. I know I was studied.
Right.
And an old high school friend, I had one friend in high school. I got a cryptic email from her a few years ago that led me to look into the high school we attended, and oh boy, it was owned by a psychiatrist.
That's a red flag right there.
I'm pretty sure they were studying all of us.
It sounds like it. There's no doubt about it. Well, and just from what you've described from the past and what he seems, his experiences with paranoia and some of the things that he kind of witnessed with information, or even hearing a communication of some kind. I mean, that reeks to me of covert warfare. And, I think it was Robert Guffey that was who I was thinking about, when you, a friend of yours and obviously mine too. And it seems like there's an awful lot of that going on, where there's a lot of games being played and people tend to be pulled into these things and misled with a lot of different technologies. Yeah. So it's
his really book, Camilio, it really frightened me, because it's another case of someone, who just through sheer bad luck ended up harassed.
Right. Yeah. And once they get their hooks in, boy, it's really hard to get them away. It's hard to disengage those guys.
You don't have to be anyone special or do anything special. You just have to come to their attention.
Correct. That's the worst part of it. Yep, you get on their radar and it can be very, very bad. No doubt about it. Yeah, I know that one. For darn sure. But yeah, when I look at a lot of this thing, his information in all his books, it certainly seems like he was tagged to some degree. A lot of information there, and I'm glad to see that you're doing okay over there in California.
Well, sounds like I'm hanging in there. Yeah. I'm seeing so many doctors that I don't have time for anything else, and they aren't helping, at least not yet.
Right. Well, it almost sounds like they're not the right doctors. I think I kind of touched on this off air, but it sounds like they really don't know what they're talking about. So I'd be very cautious.
I threw a tantrum to get referred to a specialist. I can't digest my food, and my lungs are always congested, even though there's no infection. And they're always thinking lung cancer because I smoke. But the fact is, I burn cigarettes, so I don't inhale that crap. Anyway, I finally let him x-ray my chest. I like to space out the various x-rays, so I don't get a huge dose all at once. There's no lung cancer, but I did get finally a couple of inhalers in case it gets really bad. I'm pretty sure I've become allergic to my cats. I know I'm allergic to the weeds in my yard because it's always worst when I've been pulling the weeds. Cats aren't going anywhere.
No,
my
I don't blame you.
Blackie and Inky are 19 years old, and I've had them since they were born. I had their mommy.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't know if you're allergic to your cats, and you probably have an immunity to them, I would say. It could be something else introduced to your environment. Mold, you don't discount the black mold either. That can be a problem.
No mold here, but I think just all the other stresses made me vulnerable to cat dander. A couple of guys came over and just really helped me out. They got the rugs out of here. I couldn't do it because the furniture had to be moved, and I've got a bad back, and I'm old. I'm 64 now.
Oh, you're not that old.
And they even swept out all the stuff the cats had tracked in. So I'm pretty good on cat dander right now, but not on weeds.
And watch out for those. I know you mentioned something about a spirit in the garden or something. Are you still seeing any type of apparitions or anything like that?
Oh, I was seeing a woman in a long white flowing dress walking through the rose garden.
I think that's really interesting.
So I moved my little desk. It's a little thing, doesn't weigh much, so I look out a different window. Now I occasionally see someone walking by that window, and there's still no one there.
Wow.
It kind of freaks me out.
Very interesting. Do you think that's psychic, or do you think it's something technological?
Geez. I don't think these things are psychic.
Well, it's not you seeing things psychically then. Okay, I was just curious, because sometimes they can be a projection of something else. I was just wondering, we talked about the chameleon a little bit ago, and you never know.
Yeah, the woman might have been just a psychic thing. I've been told about a ghost in this town, but not these. These they look like burglars, the ski mask.
Really? Wow.
All I can see is the head and shoulders.
That's interesting. And they're not real physical people. They're just, it looks more like something else.
There's no one there. I go out and check, and there's no one there.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot?
Well, not every day, but 2 or 3 times a week while
wow.
I'm, working on the computer.
That's something
I don't
interesting.
know. Yeah. So of course, the psychiatrist prescribed an antipsychotic, but I still see them.
Well, you shouldn't be taking that crap.
I still see them, so what's the point?
I don't think you should be taking that stuff. That's just me. I wouldn't be taking that. I'd take something else because that will make things more distorted if you ask me. But I would say that could be something technological. Honestly, if you see it in kind of like a looping where it seems like it's the same projection, over and over, it's the same pattern, that would tell me that it's probably technological. If it looks very unique and different each time. Mm-hmm.
No, it's always the same.
That sounds like a program.
Sometimes I just catch I have if it's night and the porch light is on, sometimes I just catch a shadow, but there's still no one there.
Very
it
interesting.
Just blots out the light for a second or less.
Wow. It's very interesting.
It's weird.
Do you know if Phil ever saw things like that?
He just imagined they were there. He wouldn't look outside.
Wow. Very interesting.
He'd hear a sound or he'd just have a feeling.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like he was very psychic. Right, and hypersensitive. Hypersensitive to energy. Do you think you're kind of psychic too and hypersensitive? You seem like you are.
Well, I was when we were all kids in the same house. My brother Steve and I could understand each other without a word. Mm-hmm. We'd pick up a conversation in the middle of a sentence that we hadn't started.
Wow, that's nice. Yeah, that's like natural telepathy. That's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, in the old days, remember when you have somebody call you and you could tell who it was before they even dialed in on the telephone? I don't know if you remember those. Yeah, I mean, nowadays it's different because everything is so digitized. It's very, very different. But yeah, I remember those days too. And it's, I think there's something to be said about that.
Oh, yeah, the phone was bolted to the kitchen wall and we had to ask permission to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, how things have changed.
Yeah, nowadays every kid has an iPhone that's like 6 and up, I guess. Unbelievable. But yeah, I think there's a lot of weaponization of the supernatural. I just touched on this a little bit prior with a previous interview I just did. And I'm telling you, there's such a weaponization of those things that the world that we've come to know as pure and innocent and consciousness has become tainted. So that's why it's interesting if you're starting to see things, it's not a psychotic thing, in my opinion, in any form of design. It's more either technological or a distortion in the matrix. And those are things that are literally in our face right now. So, and that's what he touched on too. And even with your writing and your inspiration, I mean, these are subjects that Philip K. Dick was touching on, especially with Blade Runner. Or, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And I have to ask you, where did he get that title? Do you remember?
Which title? Do Androids Dream?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Well, when he was married to Anne and living on her farm, they had sheep. And he took care of the sheep, and he really loved them.
Oh. Very interesting. So that's where that title came from.
Right.
Pretty cool. I always wondered about that because it's very unique. Things like that you don't hear anymore. It's just there was a time when people would have originality with their writing, and that was one of those things. You just don't see it anymore in this day and age. Most people, they copy each other and they plagiarize, or it's cookie cutter stuff. And I'm sure you noticed that as an author because your work is very individual too. It's very unique. But most people are generic. I mean, some of their data is just. To me, it's generic. Yeah,
and yet they're the ones making big bucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's disgusting. I see it all the time.
When I get together with other authors, we all agree that Stephen King wouldn't know a sentence if it bit him, and yet he's wealthy.
What do you think about his writing? What do you think about his? Don't you think it just seems like somebody who's crazy or disturbed, or no?
He makes amateur mistakes. Like he starts with his main character waking up in the morning, going to the bathroom, shaving, getting dressed. And that's the first thing they tell you not to do in writing class.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Right.
if he didn't do that, his novels wouldn't be 300 pages long.
Right.
And that's a short novel for Stephen King. And yet, he tells a good story, and I love the movies.
Mm-hmm.
But I just find him unreadable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that. I see that too. Well, I wonder how much of their own essence they pour into the characters or into the book themselves. I mean, you coming from the angle of doing your own writing also, do you put your own personality into the book, or do you just create an alter or something simulated?
Oh, sometimes it's the person I'd like to be, and sometimes it's the person I hope I'm not.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
But back to horror, like Stephen King, one of the greatest writers was Robert Bloch. Phil had me read Psycho,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
the
wow.
story.
Uh-huh.
I had seen the movie on television in black and white, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But when I read the story, it really scared me. I couldn't get in the shower.
I don't think anybody could.
Phil wrote a letter to Robert Bloch and told him that I was hiding under the bed.
Oh, really?
Robert Bloch wrote back and said, well, tell her to do what my wife does. Don't read my stories.
Oh, that's funny. That's a crack up.
Yeah,
Well, a lot of people got freaked out with Psycho. That was a creepy film. And, Hitchcock was awesome when he did those films with the black and white and the lighting, the contrast. It was very, very interesting.
yes. Oh, that would be Greg Toland, the cinematographer, wouldn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right on that. Sounds familiar.
He did Citizen Kane for Orson Welles.
Mm-hmm. That's another classic, too.
The cinematographer can make or break a film.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, yeah. There are some great writers who live and die in poverty, like Theodore Sturgeon.
Mm-hmm.
His book, More Than Human, is just awesome, and yet he was more poor than we were, and we were pretty darn poor.
Do you think he was blacklisted? I mean, what was the problem with that? Is it blacklisting?
I think it was just that science fiction didn't pay much, and he wasn't prolific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they sure do swipe it now. I mean, it seems to be so popular with all the films. Everybody seems to be into the science fiction, no doubt.
Oh, yeah. Somebody's making money on it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hollywood is, for sure. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of truth to those science fiction films, as you probably are aware. And, of course, always taken from really inspiring authors. But it is a shame. Course. Yeah. So did Phil, he had a hard time financially with this. I mean, the books really didn't make him that much money, did they?
No. I think he got $1,500 for a Scanner Darkly.
Oh, man. Are you serious? It's insulting. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that one, by the way. That one was awesome.
And nobody would buy VALIS when he first wrote it. I think he called it, it was really Radio Free Albemuth. He called it VALIS System A. Mm-hmm. Then he wrote VALIS. Then he wrote a Divine Invasion and the Transmigration of Timothy Archer, and nobody would buy them before Blade Runner was made.
Wow.
Then all of a sudden, his unsaleable novels were hot properties, and he wasn't there to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that's too bad. That's really, really sad on so many levels. I love the movie. I love the book VALIS, not the movie, but that was incredible. And also A Scanner Darkly. Now, did you have something to do with writing that? It sounded like you did with your bio.
Yep. In fact, the scene where I can't remember which character now, but he opens the hood of his car and sees a pile of dog poop.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that.
Oh, did you?
Phil wouldn't let me touch the typewriter, so I had to use a pen and paper.
Is that right? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Those are the good old days when you had a typewriter. Go ahead.
He did rent a typewriter for me, but we ran out of money and had to take it back.
Oh, that stinks.
A couple of years later, he bought me a typewriter,
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Which was very nice.
Yeah. Well, he certainly left a legacy behind. I'll tell you what. I don't know what the world would be like without his works. To be honest, I think it's big. You know, when you look at it, there are a lot of really prolific people out there, but I think he was something else. So, and I know you're extremely intelligent and brilliant too. You're an awesome writer. So I appreciate that. You know, I appreciate real knowledge, real information, and people who can really write. And it's a shame that people don't appreciate that, especially out there in Hollywood, unless they're making a ton of money off of it.
Oh, thank you. I do my best.
No, you're really good.
Well, I've developed a love for language. The words speak to me. They have a feeling about them, and I can, if it doesn't feel right, I either delete it or edit it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And I think it helps that I've studied some foreign languages. I used to be fluent in German, and I've studied a smattering of several other languages. And I think that helps understanding how different languages work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And also the vibration associated. When you said there's a feeling with each one. Yeah, that's true, because words have vibration. They carry a stream of consciousness to some degree. So that makes sense. At least that's what happens to me when I read, and I hopefully that I do the same thing when I write too. But sometimes I don't write about topics that are so friendly, with covert technology. But yeah, it's some of these worlds are very insidious, and then some are very inspiring, and then you can use your imagination with other ones, which is really nice. And it sounds like you've been able to do that.
I do my best.
Yeah.
And Phil's agent, Russ Galen, once told me that I wrote very well on the level of a sentence, but my storytelling wasn't good enough. And he was right, but I've learned since then.
Mm-hmm. That was probably a long time ago, right?
Oh, yeah, it was like 1988 or 9.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that's, a while back.
I wrote a biography of Phil. I just came across the manuscript. It's from back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Bantam Books, sent it back with a note saying that they really enjoyed reading it, but they didn't think there was a market for it. Really?
I would say there is a market for sure. Maybe now there would be, but you can always just redo it. Did you ever publish it?
No. This is back in the days of the typewriter, so I'm going to have to, pull out each page and enter it in a Word document and probably do a lot of editing. Yeah. But it's more than a memoir. It's more a biography.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds very interesting. I bet you it would sell, actually.
If I can find the time in between doctors, I'm seeing a physical therapist, a counselor, counseling psychologist, a psychiatrist, a general practitioner, a spine doctor, and a GI doctor.
That's
and I
ridiculous.
have to get the dreaded colonoscopy.
Oh, my gosh. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like you need a shaman to me.
I went to the doctor last August because I can't digest my food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. You were mentioning that on Facebook.
And I had to campaign to get some prescription enzymes, and they're a little bit helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I realized I was never going to see a GI specialist, I threw a tantrum to get the referral.
Mm-hmm.
I screamed at the doctor, "I'm going to die."
Is that why you sent you to a psychiatrist? What was the reason behind that?
Yeah. I guess she thought I was anorexic.
Oh, jeez. These people are ridiculous. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The psychiatrist says it's PTSD. It probably is.
So where would that come from?
Oh, back in the late 80s, we had a situation. My son and I witnessed some gang violence, and we did testify. Mm-hmm. We had to sell the house and leave town to get away from those stupid gang members.
Oh, wow.
They were not what you usually think of. They were, they called themselves Klan bikers, and they had the Nazi SS sign tattooed on their cheeks.
Wow.
Yeah, well, the guy went to prison,
mm-hmm.
but we had to just get out of town.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm surprised they didn't put you under a witness protection program of some kind.
No, they were not much help. Mm-hmm. The DA told us to get a restraining order, and we did, but the police would not enforce it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine that would... Go ahead.
For the first time in my life, I bought a gun. I got a 12-gauge shotgun and made sure they knew I had it.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Never had to fire it, but whoop.
We're heading for a break here, so hold that thought. Everybody, you're listening to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. My wonderful guest tonight is Tessa Dick. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.